Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. My name is Yogesh Shavda, founder of Y2S Consulting. And today I am really lucky to have Kate Stevens here from Bridge. And I met Kate back at CES earlier this year. I heard her present and I was like, oh my gosh, she's doing some pretty incredible work. And I wanted to have some time with her in her busy schedule so we could actually talk about what she does. So, Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Yogesh. It's so good to see you again.
Likewise, likewise. So, for the purposes of this audience, why don't we start first by having you give us some background about who you are?
Sure. So I'm Kate Stevens, CEO and co-founder of Bridge. My quick background on how I got here. I started out my career as a investor who was investing in omni-channel future of retail, where I discovered the problem that we're focused on solving at Bridge. Ended up leaving my job in investing, going back to Harvard Business School, meeting my co-founder there. And
Hmm.
we launched Bridge out of school to bridge the offline and online for omni-channel brands. So we work with some of the best brands and retailers in the world, from Heineken and Chobani to Skull Candy, Gosney, Lowe's Home Improvement. And so what the problem that we are solving is basically consumers are shopping across more channels than ever, online, in store, through channels like TikTok and Amazon, and now even through LLMs. They don't really care where they purchase the product, but
Hmm.
as a brand, the level of data and ability to communicate with that customer is, predicated off of the channel that they sell through.
Hmm.
So this creates a multi-trillion-dollar problem for those brands, and so we're helping solve that problem, being that bridge between the brand and the customer. So that's a quick intro on myself.
Oh, that's amazing because you're right. The channels are fragmented, with especially with the LLM, introduction, if you want to call it that, since last year. There's a lot of work happening in that space. I'm talking a lot about that space as well. So I do have questions on that later on. But let's first kind of like start with the whole um, complexity of what you just mentioned, because there's a lot of complexity there.
Yeah,
So walk us through, number one, how do you even define omnichannel first? Because I think there needs to be clarity on that definition,
yeah.
and then we can talk about the complexity that follows after that.
Sure. I think there's a lot of different definitions of omnichannel. The way that I would describe it is meeting your customer wherever they shop. And so for a omnichannel brand,
Hmm.
that could mean that they sell in Target, they sell on Amazon, they sell on TikTok Shop, they sell through their own D2C website. And so omnichannel is that they're meeting their customer across those multiple channels.
Hmm.
For a retailer like Lowe's, it is that they sell both in store and online. So a customer who also shops online and in store is 43% more valuable to Lowe's. So thinking about that omni-channel, and now Lowe's also has a marketplace. So really thinking about the flywheel of wherever that consumer shops, the brand
Hmm.
or retailer.
Okay, so with that definition, you mentioned that there's complexity of data. So let's talk about that. Where does the complexity come in?
Sure. On the brand side, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It is really just been the status quo forever that the retailer owns the data
Mhm.
when a brand sells through that channel. So that includes marketplaces like Amazon, for example. And that means that, let's take Feastables, for example. If you buy a Feastables candy bar from Walmart or the grocery store from Kroger, or from Amazon, uh, those channels, those retail channels own that customer data, i.e., even though you very much align as a consumer with buying a Feastables chocolate bar, um,
Mhm.
Feastables before a solution like Bridge has no idea who bought their product. So
Mhm.
that's one complexity. Another complexity is the basically deprecation of third-party cookies, which is basically inhibited a brand's ability to know customers, just through their web browsing and shopping behavior. This has made first party data ownership much more important, because basically before this, privacy change and, cookie change, um, basically paid advertising could be much more targeted and much more efficient.
Hmm.
And so, as cookies have changed, it's much more important from a training their algorithm as well as targeting perspective, that these brands have first party data.
Hmm.
And I would say like the third complexity is, moving into this agentic AI world that we are. How do you think about the role that first party data plays in supporting a brand's ability to win in agentic commerce?
Wow, that's a lot. Because I remember working at Spotify and Pinterest, and just trying to deal with your second layer that you talked about. That was pretty complex back then, as well. So with the changes that are happening there, uh, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because there's a lot of stuff in that space, but
Yeah.
that evolution that's happened there, um, I guess, is now also kind of like butting heads with what you were talking about, the agentic world. That's where I want to really spend my time here. Tell me about how that is. How are you seeing it, and how is that being mapped out right now? Maybe let's start with that, the layering part of it, and then we can talk about what the implications are back to the brands and the retailer as well.
Yeah. So as I think about a brand setting themselves up for a world of agentic commerce, I think the first thing that they need to think about is making sure that their products are discoverable and optimized for AEO or GEO,
Hmm.
i.e., what is important now for a brand to be discoverable via an LLM as increasingly adoption and, consumers are looking for products and answers in this new format, which is instead of your traditional search format, where you're, optimizing for SEO, now there's much longer queries that have a lot more context. So, what are the formats that benefit those LLMs? So I think that there's the product catalog, making sure that that is optimized for search, and then making sure that you have the materials to, whether it's reviews or Reddit posts, the things that will help your brand optimize for an LLM finding and recommending your product. So I think that that's layer one.
Hmm.
The second layer, or at least like what every brand has to do first, in my opinion, the second layer is then, setting up for agentic shopping. And so it's unclear exactly what agentic shopping, like how it exactly it will take force, or take place.
Hmm.
Will checkout happen within these LLMs? Will it happen, still on the brand's website? I think that we're seeing different types of partnerships emerge there. So I think the next stage becomes how how can an agent shop your product on behalf of a consumer, and how are you setting yourself up for that next stage of commerce?
My understanding is that, especially with brands like Shopify, if your website space is based on them, they are actually launching protocols specifically, as is OpenAI and Google, that you have to sign up for their protocols so that you are actually discoverable in the first place.
Yep.
And I think all that stuff has just happened in the last few weeks, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Have you seen what that looks like? Have you heard of any companies that have gone through the process and they've actually gotten approved yet, or not yet?
Good question. I've been tracking the like large announcements. I know Sephora just also announced a partnership with ChatGPT about
Mhm.
it was at
Yeah,
Shop Talk, so about 3 weeks ago,
yeah.
where you can now search and then natively check out through ChatGPT. So I have not asked a brand directly about what their process is, though it's a good question to ask. I know Shopify has definitely been kind of leading the way, as has Walmart and Sephora
Mhm.
on kind of like setting up agentic shopping experiences for their consumers in a very native way. I think that different brands and retailers are approaching it slightly differently in terms of their partnerships.
Mhm.
Um, but I think then, so that becomes kind of a product discoverability. That's like,
Yeah.
first layer. The next layer becomes like, are consumers truly using agents to do their shopping? And what types of product categories will best kind of lend or be most shopped by agents? I think that behavior has not yet truly been identified.
Well, to a certain degree, I've seen data from Euromonitor and a couple of other companies from 2025. So this is now 4 months old. So take it for what it's worth. But leading into the shopping, the holiday period last year, both BCG and Euromonitor had shared some numbers in terms of the percentage of the population that was playing around from a discoverability perspective. That doesn't mean that they went from the full process and then made the purchase, but they had used an LLM at some point in their discovery process to make the selection. And if I'm not mistaken, like a skincare in the beauty space, for example, roughly a third of the consumers were looking around from that vantage point. High ticket purchase items tended to have more usage from an LLM perspective. When you got to food, the numbers were much lower. Now that doesn't mean that food will never come up. It will, because I think Albertsons and others are also like tying up with OpenAI. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, basically. But I
Oh, yeah.
think
I mean, there's no doubt that consumers are using LLMs for discoverability of product to make
yeah,
shopping decisions. I
yeah,
think the behavior that's not yet fully played out is how then that agent is fully transferred. So, i.e., like
yes, yeah,
you give a directive, like I'm searching for a vacuum cleaner, go
mm,
purchase the one that has these characteristics.
correct,
I think that
yeah.
that's the behavior that we haven't yet seen.
You're right about that, and you brought that up earlier in terms of the shop the final step, which is the actual purchase. I thought I saw an article a couple of weeks ago about the OpenAI Walmart pilots that they were running. The numbers didn't seem to play out versus their online e-com site, basically. So I think that's the reason why Walmart decided not to go down that direction. It seems like. I don't know if you heard that or not.
I did hear that Walmart is approaching it differently, so I didn't know that it was based off of kind of a pilot. I was actually just in Bentonville 2 weeks ago, so was speaking to the Walmart team, and their general commentary is that they, think that there's a higher level of trust from the Walmart site itself,
Yes.
at least for the Walmart customer, so I think perhaps that is their current view, but I think like consumer behavior is changing so rapidly also
Yeah.
um, that I think that brands and retailers are trying to like maximize like like basically all the different ways consumer behavior can change, i.e., like what do they need to get ready for, knowing that
Mhm.
it's like a pretty uncertain um, there's like no direct line of like this is 100% what consumer behavior, this is
Mhm.
like how agents are going to shop, this is how consumers are going to behave. So I think that everyone is like looking to take their best bets, but it's not like a cut and dry answer as to like where that market is going.
100%, 100%. I completely agree with you. Things are very fluid right now, right? And
Yes.
in terms of what I think might be also happening is that for the last 2 or 3 years, all of us have been told like, don't put your personal information on ChatGPT or on any LLM, because it goes into the training model, blah blah blah. So the trust factor of using an LLM to make a purchase requires you to put your credit card information in. Why would you do it if you've just been told for the last 2 years not to put any of your PII information
Yes.
in, right?
Yes.
So I think there's a an emotional barrier that's been built up now, and for any of these platforms to be able to overcome that, they will have to somehow shift that narrative in a very big way and get people to believe it. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight, basically.
Totally agree.
you know so I'm just curious, as we go through this conversation, like, um, do you feel the adoption rate for shopping through LLMs especially after what I just said, do you feel it's going to be happening at the same speed as what we saw in the e-com space over the last 15 years or so, or do you think it's going to be much faster than that?
Um, well, I would say if we're thinking about normal e-com, kind of like year-over-year adoption,
Yeah,
I would say that is different from what we saw in 2020, which was there was a forcing function around e-commerce adoption driven by COVID.
yeah,
So that was a almost in like unnatural forcing function,
yeah.
from like a speed perspective. That being said, the adoption of AI from a search capability, if that is any like has adopted far faster than the like the internet adoption. So um I think that if that is any indicator of like where commerce is going, um, I would think that at least as a discoverability, that it will be adopted faster than e-commerce because the behavior to buy online is already there. And
Hmm.
so then using this new tool for discoverability when it is already being pretty widely adopted. What I don't yet have clarity on is like how that like true agent shopping
Hmm.
adoption will look like because that feels, I think, like the biggest jump in terms of behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense. So coming back to the first party data point you made earlier, the question that I've not been able to wrap my head around is how will you collect first party data from an LLM, right? Because it's not as if they're releasing stats or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's a top of the funnel issue. You can control, whether your brand has access, is discoverable or not. That's one part of it. But from the consumer side, how will we measure that? Or is that something that you're tackling, or is that something that you've been playing around with? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So, couple of things. One is from the bridge perspective, the way in which we're collecting first party data is from the end consumer, typically post purchase. And so, whether a consumer comes through an LLM, a retailer, a marketplace, ultimately we're getting that first party data from the consumer itself. So
Okay.
we are largely indifferent to the channel of discovery. So, don't really see any like incremental issues from that like first party data collection perspective. So, just to give examples, register your warranty, enter this sweepstakes, cashback rebate, free
Hmm.
gift. These are all value transfers,
Yeah.
um, that often are delivered through a QR code post purchase. So we have pre-purchase solutions, but using that example, that I would say is discovery channel or purchase channel agnostic almost,
Yeah.
as long as the experience or the bridge piece is incorporated as part of that post-purchase customer journey.
Hmm.
Um, I have heard that OpenAI is um, thinking through a protocol that basically allows you to anonymously understand and tie back um, customer information. So basically, as they think about building perhaps like an ad platform, the ability to identify users and like have a protocol to tie that back so that it can
Hmm.
learn, but also be useful as that like personal identifier without identifying the individual. So I know that that is like in the works in some way. I can't go much deeper than that just because my knowledge of it is peripheral.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that that's kind of like the emerging aspect of, what you see from, a platform like Meta that has a unique identifier hashed, basically a hashed email that
Hmm.
has all of these attributes behind it that allows a brand marketer to very richly and specifically target these different cohorts of users.
Got it. Yeah. And talking about Meta, they've been behind this journey. It seems like it's not because they're not investing; they're investing a lot of money in this space also. But clearly, they're running into some technical challenges, maybe around the stuff that you're talking about, because they're trying to use the social aspects of the data that they've got access to help with the agentic, purchase process. And I'm just curious if there's anything that you've seen or heard on that front as well.
It's a good question. I Yeah, I feel like they haven't been like the winner, so to speak, in this AI race.
Yeah.
Um, one one would argue that Google is actually a more natural beneficiary from like the natural already like owning search.
Yeah.
Um, Meta is really more of a targeting demand gen platform. Um, but in my own purview, it's been kind of a race of like Google and Gemini, OpenAI, and then like increasing like Claude.
Hmm.
I would say, and yeah, Anthropic. Claude, from like a tool perspective, actually has become my strong favorite. But I don't know why Meta is not doing as well
Yeah.
in this space.
Yeah. And by the way, I share your point of view on the Anthropic one. The tools are phenomenal right now. So
Yeah.
truly outstanding, actually. Um,
Yes.
Coming back to Bridge, so with all these things that are happening around us, and here you are helping literally bridge between first party data and connecting it to brands and helping them understand what to do in an omni-channel environment. Walk us through some use cases of what that you can share, as to how are brands utilizing your capabilities to help them grow their business.
Yeah. Let's take a couple of examples. So, maybe we'll take Caraway. They're a pots and pans brand,
Mhm.
started digitally native. So, I'm sure that they've blown up most people's Instagram ads at some point. They, started on their own D2C. They now sell on Amazon, and they also sell in several different retailers. So, there's a point at which their D2C from a, like, efficiency of growth tapped out, so they
Mhm.
started moving into Amazon and wholesale,
Mhm.
as a way to more efficiently grow their business. Where Bridge comes in is there's a, QR code on an insert to register your warranty, and they actually have different flows by channel. So if you bought on D2C, it's one flow. If you bought on Amazon, it's another. If you bought in retail, it's a third flow. And
Mhm.
this is a data capture tool. So they're able to capture that customer first party data, the registration. They understand what channel the customer is coming from. And then based off of the channel, they're, pushing you to do different actions. So on Amazon, they really want you to leave reviews because that dramatically benefits the Amazon algorithm. So
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
have generated, um, you know, hundreds of thousands of reviews through that flow. From retail, I think that they're super interested in knowing who that customer is, and then also what channels they purchase through. And then it's not just getting access to that data, it's then the activation of that data. So
Mhm.
we have workflows to their email marketing platforms. They're specifically use Klaviyo,
Mhm.
which allows them to then take that data, that customer email, and bring them through different welcome flows where they're introducing this customer to other products. And so what we've seen just from an outcomes perspective is, they're collecting, not only hundreds of thousands of emails, but driving incremental revenue then from these customers because they bring them into their email flows, introduce them to complementary products. If you're familiar with the, Caraway product line, they have like beautiful colors. And so if you bought one pot in, a certain color line, you might be interested in the complementary sets.
Mhm.
And I would say something they do extremely, extremely well is that like personalized email marketing, which allows them to really grow the value of a customer that is owned. So
Mhm.
that's one example. Maybe a very different example. So we work with the cannabis beverage. It's a THC beverage brand, and
Mhm.
in the beverage space, it is also started D2C forward. But retail is definitely the future for the brand, as it is for most beverage. It's beverage is a heavy category, so that is often really purchased at retail.
Mhm.
And so in beverage, especially in kind of like this cannabis beverage space where it is a new category, and consumers still need to understand like what that feel is going to be. Driving trial, or what they'll often say is cans in hands, is super important. And
Mhm.
so what Can does is um, basically they have a strong paid ad strategy. They push out this bridge rebate offer to try the product for free or to try the product for a discount. Purchase it in retail, and so then customer basically clicks on this bridge flow. They text in their receipt, and then the consumer gets a cashback rebate. And
Mhm.
so from Can's perspective, they're supporting their retailers, they're driving retail velocity, but then they also get to drive that trial with the consumer. And then importantly, collect a lot of information about that consumer. So they get their contact information, who they are, as well as what else they purchased in their basket. So they're
Mhm.
getting this really rich data set on their customer and who actually tried their product, to remarket to them and get them to ultimately buy more product.
And at the end of the day, the brand is pushing your QR code through their packaging. Is that how it works?
Good question. So that is one way. So in the
Mhm.
Caraway example, it is a QR code to register your product.
Right.
Can is actually, a QR code is a two-dimensional link. So
Yeah.
you can think about Bridge as we build these mobile first landing pages that have different workflows. So one of our workflows is a rebate redemption. So Can actually pushes that just through a landing page, like through paid ads. So it's like you see an ad to try a free like can of Can, and we're then powering that workflow to get the cash back.
Okay. Got it. Got it. So with all this, with these workflows that you've got, and you're capturing the how the consumer is coming in and buying the brand, um, and you're obviously getting a certain kind of like ROI from that, of course, and all that wonderful stuff. How are the brands then thinking about maintaining that momentum, because it's also based on accessibility of their product in the particular retailer as well, and whether they have enough shelf space and all that kind of stuff. So do you get involved in any of that stuff at all in terms of conversations, or is that something that you don't have to worry about?
So we definitely, often talk about how, it's a hard job to get on shelf, but then a harder job to stay on shelf.
Yep.
So, a large portion of our customers are CPG brands where they are looking to, support their retail partners on how they can drive velocity and how they can stay on shelf. So it is
Mm.
absolutely a way that we, are supporting our brands. Um, I'll give kind of another example. So Local Hive Honey is a honey brand.
Yeah.
They use our so they use us for QR codes on product as a data collection tool. When they collect that data, they're looking to mostly drive retail sales. They're
Mhm.
emailing their customers to try other products about new product launches. So they're very much pushing that customer base back to retail.
Mhm.
They use our rebates to support sell through at retail. So as an alternative to couponing, rebates give them a lot much more control in kind of that consumer experience.
Mhm.
And then they're also using us to help collect reviews from their retail customers. So we recently launched an integration with Bazaar Voice, which is one of the largest syndicator of reviews ever.
Mhm.
It is often a requirement of brands to in retail to have a certain number of reviews to hit their threshold. So we are helping. We drove for Local Hive Honey 30% of their review collection last quarter, which obviously is meaningful to them from a hitting those goals, and then ultimately, as you think about benefiting LLMs, but then also just the retail media space. So all of these retailers, often are optimizing by reviews for purposes of who shows up and benefits search.
Well, reviews is also affecting the earlier conversation around agentic commerce as well,
Yes.
because that's a major input. And if you don't hit certain thresholds on that too, I think it can impact your visibility scores, is from what I
Yep.
understand.
Yep. Reviews are more important than ever.
Yeah, and I wonder, uh, do brands ask you this question, that how can we improve the quality of reviews, or how can we get
Mm,
people to actually give the reviews? You're creating the workflow. You simplify that and reduce the friction for making it happen, but still somebody has to do it, right? So
yeah.
how does that work in your world?
Yeah. So there is an inherent benefit to when we are meeting a customer, especially when a brand is using us, on the product as a QR code or on an insert, because
Yeah,
they are often using or experiencing the product at that point in time. So it
yeah,
is a very natural time to be
mhm,
hitting the customer to ask them for a review. So, at the end of the day, we like to think about everything from the consumer experience. And so it's like, what is the consumer's natural flow that it is most logical to hit them or touch them in that flow. So timing matters a lot. The visibility of the ask to the consumer matters a lot too. So
mhm, mhm,
specifically getting the consumer to scan the QR code,
mhm.
it needs to be very clear to the consumer that there's a benefit in them doing so, and like physically they just need to be able to see it in their workflow. So
Yes,
the
yes.
more like it is part of that unboxing experience in a, branded, thoughtful way, the better your engagement is going to be.
Mhm,
Um, and then finally, like, what is the value to the consumer? So, of course, you're going to get those reviews just from customers that genuinely love the product and like want to shout it from the rooftops. But there's also an aspect of incentivizing a review, giving a consumer a benefit.
yeah.
So, we've definitely seen brands giving loyalty points, giving, cash back, some sort of, reward or thank you to the consumer. And that's, definitely going to help support more customers, you know, get leaving reviews.
Yeah, and in a way, with the way you structured this, you're also reducing fraud, I would imagine, for reviews as well, right?
Yes, because it's,
Yeah.
directly coming from a purchaser.
Exactly, right? Because that's been the others. I hear this all the time. In the media, that how many fake reviews are out there, and so on and so forth, and that can also impact what's happening. But you're giving a cleaner read to that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
amazing, amazing. So, what are you seeing? The other thing that I was thinking about, as I was preparing for this conversation today, is that you're almost capturing early signals as well, in a way, with the way you've structured your data collection as well, right? Are you seeing brands asking you, like, are there certain things that you're picking up that could lead to a new trend or a new behavior that may have not emerged through other data sources? Are you seeing anything like that at all?
So, I think one of the things that we like personally are very excited about from a data and an insights perspective with
Hmm.
AI is that we're now using it to figure those things out when we don't even need to actively look at, be looking for those things. So
Yeah.
we have an agent in our platform that
Mhm.
basically is taking in all of these different data points. What retailer is the customer coming from? Receipt data, often demographic information, purchase intent. And so we can, yeah, ask our agent like what is interesting
Mhm.
across different brand behavior.
Mhm.
And so we're both looking at it on a individual brand basis.
Mhm.
Brands will take this data back to their retailers and say, this is what we learned about our customer, literally down creating reports that's like, this is the specific demo of this brand. This is how they discovered it. And this is, where they're purchasing it. So they're taking that demo information back to their retail partners.
Mhm.
I would say what's also interesting is that we're aggregating this data across different cohorts. So we're looking
Mhm.
at it by category, by brand size, by use case and seeing what is working best from a benchmarking perspective, and
Hmm.
then bringing those learnings across the different categories. Like, what's the highest converting? Like,
Hmm.
we know that a free gift is one of the highest converting value transfers that you can give to your
Hmm.
customer. It does not need to be a super expensive gift. We have seen stickers be like an amazing conversion tool. And so what's really interesting about that is like, yeah, we can see what great looks like and then bring that across different brands and use cases. I remember, very early on, people being like, I don't really get, like, why are you doing like warranty and at the same time doing sweepstakes like those,
Hmm.
or doing rebates, like those are very different. And
Yeah.
now they're actually extremely similar from like a like software functionality. And the value like in a lot of what Bridge has built is that we've really taken a platform approach to building these solutions because we've found that um, you know, not every brand that does a sweepstakes also wants to do warranty, but many do.
Hmm.
And then, also we share the software infrastructure and the benchmarking across to understand kind of. So I'll give you another example from like a feature functionality perspective is we do AI receipt verification, so like OCR.
Hmm.
That benefits our sweepstakes solution. It benefits our rebate solution. It benefits our warranty solution.
Hmm.
Um, we spoke briefly about fraud before.
Yeah.
Um, Fraud in receipts is like it's always been something that we've thought about is a bigger problem than ever now with AI because you could literally tell AI to build a receipt. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
some of the just like fraud capabilities and protections that we're building in benefit multiple products as opposed to just being this point solution.
Wow. Wow. So that kind of like opens up another conversation in my head around the fact that okay, you've got this information coming in, you're able to almost map out the entire path to purchase or the consumer journey, and you could also be recommending ways to shorten the consumer journey as well, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Is that a space that you guys are playing around with leveraging AI to help you figure that out? Or I'm just curious to
it's
hear
a
what.
good question.
Yeah.
Right now, what we're doing is basically like helping brands cross sell other
Yeah.
information. So, like in that way, we're supporting that shopping experience.
Yeah.
As we think about kind of the next iteration of how we're using AI in the product, yes,
Hmm.
is the short answer. So not today, but like we will.
Yeah.
Basically, like identify my highest LTV customers across omnichannel. Like those are the type of to focus those marketing efforts.
Yeah.
Um,
Because, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no, no, no. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's high. It's your high LTV customers is also going to be a way to also do two things. Target your high in your obviously your high engagement or retention. Highly engaged customers, which is why they're LTV high LTV anyways. But also to predict who's potentially going to churn, and you
Yep.
can figure out how to get to them beforehand.
Yep, totally. Um, we're starting to use data and notifications in our own customer data to kind of, predict and get ahead of churn.
Hmm.
So absolutely.
Do you feel that in a consumer-facing DTC brand, it's somewhat relatively easier to do it versus having it available through on and offline? If it's exclusively DTC, how does
Oh,
that work?
definitely. Yeah. I mean, as a D2C brand, you have access to all of the data on your customer. You know
Right.
who they are, when they
Mhm.
shopped you last,
Mhm.
multiple aspects of their shopping behavior.
Mhm.
And that's actually one of the reasons that like Bridge is such a compelling solution, and like kind of like the why now is
Mhm.
that COVID really drove this mass adoption of e-commerce. And out of the e-commerce boom emerged the growth marketer.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
is this extremely data driven marketer that is using very clear metrics to define acquisition, to acquire customers, feeding these very powerful algorithms to collect that data.
Yeah.
And so brands now know the power of data-driven acquisition.
hmm
They need to be omni-channel to scale effectively because there are, a very rare few brands that can like truly scale into a massive organization without moving into these other channels. They're, the telehealth businesses, like they
Yeah.
should and always need to be D2C. But from because Meta like taps out and you're ultimately competing for eyeballs in this, attention economy,
Yeah.
retail becomes a more efficient acquisition channel. But it becomes so frustrating for these brands to, you know what D2C looks and feels like from a data oriented acquisition and then go into retail where they
Mm.
know absolutely nothing about their customer. It is a black box. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that like growth marketer mindset and acknowledge of like if they had this data, the power of that data is, fundamentally one of the reasons that Bridge exists.
And I'm going to take it one step further because you could have your own retail footprint that belongs to you, but the moment you cross over into franchises or third-party locations, then that changes the dynamic, or does it not change the dynamic in your world?
Repeat the question on the third party.
So let's say, for example, you have a brand and you're going to have a retail footprint, but
Okay.
you're doing it through franchise owners.
Mm.
How would that work in your world?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually have a couple of retailers in our pipeline that have a franchise model.
Yeah.
I think the dynamic to balance actually even with the bridge model or
Yeah.
franchise model is that there's this inherent tension about like who owns the customer and like stealing from one or the other. Like that is
Yes.
just like a
Yeah.
fundamental tension that exists in this model.
Yep.
Um, we have very much taken the approach at Bridge of the harmonious relationship between a brand and retailer, and
Mhm.
that by Bridge giving more data to the brand, it actually supports the retailer. And
Mhm.
we have, many examples of that. I would say it's like the number one or number two objection that we'll get.
Mhm.
But we then demonstrate all the ways that brands use our data to support their retail partners.
Mhm. Mhm.
The same applies with the franchise model.
Yeah.
So just, making sure that there is a harmonious relationship between all parties.
No, that makes sense. And the other use case that I was thinking about, I worked in the hearing aids industry for a couple of years,
Mm.
and that industry has, um, at least in the US, like really two different or three different like channels. There's the online channel, which is small but growing. You have national retailers like Costco and Miracle Year and others. They have a pretty big footprint of their own. But then you have all these, my words, mom and pop,
Yep.
audiology clinics.
Yep.
There are thousands of them, right? And in that world, what's happened is that all the major manufacturers are marketing to the audiology clinics their hearing aids, and the expectation, or the way the business model is structured right now, at least, is the clinics are the ones who are doing the outreach to potential or prospective patients.
Yep.
And I think about what you're providing. I almost wonder if it makes sense to sell to have your capabilities with the manufacturer brands to then enable the small mom and pop, clinics to be able to utilize it to attract more customers, because their big issue is that once a person finds out that they have a hearing loss issue to actually buying a set of hearing aids, the average time for that's about almost 7 years in the US. It's a
Wow.
yeah, and mainly because of stigma, right?
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking like, maybe you have a capability here that could actually help shorten that time period and actually
Mhm.
drive more user acquisition in the process.
Yes. Yes. 100%. I was like, I've actually never sold in the hearing aid department, but everything you described, we have other examples of brands who basically have like small B2B distribution of their product. So the manufacturer ultimately never owns that relationship. And you're right. When you talk about shortening the cycle,
Hmm.
I think about like some of our best customers are when there's a consumable component to the product. So think about
Hmm.
an appliance with a filter.
Yeah.
So like shortening that cycle, making it more seamless, bringing the customer directly back to the manufacturer to make that purchase as opposed to, buying it from another retailer. So that is a very good use case for us.
Yeah, maybe we should make some introductions somewhere along the way, So it's been a few years since I left that industry, but I think about it constantly simply because I have this passion about stigma and how to
Mm,
overcome stigma. And, part of the challenge in my mind is that, it's not a rational conversation you're having with the person, it's really an
mhm.
emotional conversation. So
Yeah.
anything that can help, trigger or to get people to reconsider their choices, because the moment the patient's sitting in the seat and they actually put on hearing aids, the stigma goes away because
Yeah.
suddenly they can hear
They can
things
hear.
again.
Totally. And my father-in-law
Yeah.
wears a hearing aid, and we've dealt with that emotional challenge ourselves. So I completely understand that journey. On the topic of stigma, if that's something you feel passionately about,
Yeah.
um, GLP-1s. I feel
Yep.
like that is another
Another
really
one. Yep.
interesting, highly just complicated,
Mhm.
emotional stigma journey.
Yep.
Um, and one of my favorite ads in like the GLP-1 space has been Serena Williams support for Roe. I'm not sure if you've seen
Yep.
that ad.
Yep.
But what I think it addresses is in, that space. Like, I think that there's like a camp of for those who, are type 1 diabetic, like undoubtedly they need this
Mhm.
drug. And it is like, honestly been a miracle drug.
Yeah.
For the category maybe in between
Mhm.
that, I think like some people might say, oh, it is like a shortcut. Um,
Mhm.
what's amazing about Serena Williams being the face of those ads is that she is like one of the greatest athletes of all time, and no one is going to accuse her of taking a shortcut.
Yeah.
Or if they do, I like just dramatically push back on that. So I think it
Yeah.
like really it did such a great job of addressing, I think, that stigma.
Mhm.
Um, and I just think like it is like incredible advertising, incredible marketing.
I agree with you, and I did some research last summer, in fact, on trying to understand Ozempic as one of the products, basically. So I tested for 5 different brands, all of them facing some degrees of stigma. So it went from Ozempic to Tesla because of all the controversies last year around, Elon Musk and Doge. Beyond Meat in the plant-based space. I had Tinder in the dating space, and then the last one, which was OnlyFans, in
Mm,
the adult entertainment space, right? So when you asked questions on those 5 brands, from a stigma lens perspective, you could literally see the severity of the stigma, the type of stigma. I've got a framework for that I've built
mm,
out, and from that, I went to Claude and I basically used Claude to help me create a modeling tool. I could put in any brand name and be able to say, what's the severity of stigma, and what would be the strategy to overcome it, basically, and how long will it take for you to overcome it.
mm,
I would love to be able to have access to actual real data to be able to make it a lot more robust, but there's a framework that's there now. I just need access to data. That's my issue. you
yep.
know so if you're playing in GLP-1, by the way, let me know, because I know others who are also talking about this as well. And there may be like a community that needs to form around this space too,
Mm,
from an insights and analytics perspective. So,
super interesting.
okay, coming back to Bridge, I have one last question for you, Kate.
Okay.
I can't believe we've been talking already for 49 minutes. It's just been going so fast. The question I have for you is, you talked about AI a few times, right? You're using it in your systems and stuff like that. Um, Give me a sense of what are brands getting wrong when they're using AI in the context of the work you're doing? Are there any situations like that you're faced so far? I'm just curious.
Hmm. So I think one of the biggest like things that brands or just like individuals get wrong is maybe like a couple of things. One is like
Mm.
they're stopping at just using AI for copy.
Yeah.
Because obviously the applications beyond that from a workflow perspective and a
Yeah.
insight perspective go so much further than just like make this sound better.
Yeah.
I think that that's one piece. I think the other piece that from just like an AI adoption perspective that individuals get wrong is
Mm.
they'll use the tool a couple times and they don't get the output that they want. And so thus
Mhm.
they're like, oh, it's not good enough. It didn't get me what I wanted. It's faster if I just do it myself.
Yeah.
And the reality is like you need to keep tinkering because eventually when you get the prompt right, it like does magical things. And I
Yeah.
see, people stop or people stop after a couple of tries and say, oh, it just like it couldn't get it done. I'll just do it
Mhm.
myself faster. And I think that that's a huge miss in
Mhm.
just basically inspiring this adoption curve. Finally, I think like one of the biggest barriers to AI adoption is just like knowing what you can use it for, because I think the use cases are truly endless, but I don't even know that we know how to think about yet all of the applications. And
Mhm.
so, from our own team's perspective, we have like two key ways that we're driving adoption.
Mhm.
One is like forced sharing of use cases.
Mm.
We have basically like twice a week, an individual is assigned to share how they're using AI to 10x their efficiency or productivity. And so that is like that sharing inspires different use cases that you're like, oh, wow, that's like useful to me, especially cross functionally between engineering and go to market. Um, the second is just like really encouraging and making it a culture to call people out if they did something that they should have used AI to do faster or better. And
Mm.
so, someone will be like, oh, I'm going to have like XYZ do this. And I'll be like, try Claude first.
Yeah.
And so there's really just this like culture
Yeah.
of like a forcing function and then
Yeah.
sharing, because
Mhm.
as we share these different use cases, it's really inspiring others to be like, oh, wow, I can use like AI for this, I can use it for that. And so I think there's generally just a inspiration and intellectual curiosity that individuals need to have to be trying different use cases.
How do you overcome the issue? Because I love everything you said. I think these are great ways to help drive adoption. But do you feel that there's an issue around people's identity being challenged by usage of AI? And have you faced that, and how have you overcome that, if you have?
Um, Absolutely. I think that people are like petrified of AI. Um,
Mhm.
and I myself will definitely say that I'm like, holy crap. Like you just think about like where's the world going? It's moving so quickly.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely just like a fear there.
Mm.
As it relates to identity, from a like our own like talent and who we're willing to have on the team at Bridge, we have
Yeah.
a very, very strong perspective that AI is not taking your job tomorrow, but
Mhm.
someone who uses AI better than you absolutely will. And so if someone does have an identity issue with using AI, they certainly haven't shared it with me because they honestly, there's no space for that on our team, not to be cutthroat, but like we're a software team, like a software engineer. Sorry, we're like a software company. If you're
Yeah.
not using AI every single day, you do not deserve to be on this team. And we have a company value around it that's
Mhm.
like use AI to be 10x better or more efficient every single day. And
I
so
love
that's
that.
like a hiring expectation, but also, like a team expectation that we just, like, don't even have room for people that aren't utilizing AI.
You're the first one I've heard say something like that from a values perspective, that you put AI into your values for your company, because that's a huge mindset shift for a lot of people. I
Yeah,
think that would scare a lot of people right now too, who are, probably sitting in their seats right now, thinking like, "Oh my gosh, like what does that mean for me?" kind of thing. Because I agree with you that that should be the mindset, but more importantly, as companies start adopting it, and if people are not prepared for it, that's going to be the challenge for them.
yes, agree.
So
I think that, like, it's just a behavior that and it's a new skill that everyone needs to, to be utilizing every single day.
100%. 100%. Well, Kate, I know we're almost at the top of the hour. I can't thank you enough for making time from your busy schedule to be here with me today on a Friday afternoon. Thank you so much. Any last closing thoughts from you?
At the end of the day, I think that like I could sum up our conversation in like two key thoughts or summaries. The
Yep.
first is that a winning brand needs to meet their customer wherever they want to shop. That is what, the definition of omni-channel, and having the ability to own that customer relationship will help them grow their business across all channels. That's like an undeniable fact.
Yep.
The second is that the world is changing at a extremely rapid pace with AI, and that you know forcing yourself to like push yourself on new applications of AI is going to set you up for success in any career that you are in, because yeah, the world is just changing so rapidly.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Kate, listen, if you ever have new news to share, I'd love to have you back on here anytime. So you let me know, but thank you so much for being here. How
Thank
can
you,
people
Yogesh.
how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn, Kate Stevens.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Thank you, Kate, as well, again, for being here today. We'll be back next week. We're going to have a conversation about digital twins next week. So there you go. So good one.
Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank you.